their way through Club Corner. And it is the Maseratis, Porsche and the Mark Chilton Nissan Skyline on the front row of the grid. The safety car is going to continue round, however, for a further lap. So they've clearly decided the conditions have deteriorated now so that it's gone from dry, which they qualified in, into wet, which means that we do end up with a second formation lap. It will be behind the safety car, but what is happening is the clock is already ticking. So we are already into the 40-minute race now. So the race has started. But next time we'll go green and we'll get things away.
See the cars coming through Club and staying in their grid order, approximately side by side. So there on the right-hand side of the track, you can see the Jaguar XJS, and then the Mustang, the white car that our camera is in alongside. And behind that is the beautiful Aston Martin DB4 of Nicholas King, which is out racing. Great to see Nicholas out in that car. It is an original car, so it's worth an awful lot of money. But Nick really enjoys his racing, and great to see him out as we see the front of the field again.
He's a very brave man bringing out a car that's worth that amount of money. Whilst you can trust yourself to drive it appropriately, you can't necessarily always bank on the fact that everything around you happens as you expect. And hats off to Nick King for bringing it out here. He also brought it all the way to Anglesey for our previous race meeting, and raced it in the night race as well, which meant that he was out there circulating, and he'd got caterhams flying past him in the dark at night, and he was at the wheel of his Aston Martin DB4, so a very brave man indeed. Nice to see we've got the old TVR at the back of the grid as well, haven't we? That is the car that's another car that had problems in qualifying this morning, if memory serves me correctly, so that's why that sits at the back of the grid. I think that was one of the cars that did the few laps out of session to enable it to start at the back of the grid. It's not shown on our original grid sheet, is it?
No, we had one or two cars at lunchtime, didn't we? And later on doing some out of session. Porsche is such a make or mark that is connected with motor racing over all the years that they've been racing. Multiple Le Mans winners, and the type of Porsche that's out racing in this race are the 911 variants.
So Nissan Skyline on the grid, Audi V8 Quattro on the grid, Toyota Celica on the grid. Are they all four-wheel drive in the configuration that they race? If they are, well, in the wet, that could be a big advantage for them.
They certainly, they were four-wheel drive. Whether some of the Skylines run two-wheel drive because of the regulations. Yeah. So you'd have to ask Mark Chilton whether he's running four-wheel drive or not in this one and what the regulations say. But it's a good point. In the wet, the four-wheel drive would be a huge advantage. Certainly the Audi should be, because it's listed as a car,
Quattro,
as the Quattro,
I don't think there's anything in the regulations. I just having a quick look through that would exclude four-wheel drive if that was a standard part of the car when they were produced, because they largely have to remain with the standard. The engine has to be based on a standard car. You can modify the internals of the engine, but it has to be the same block as would have been originally provided in that car. It's the same gearbox exterior that has to be as per originally provided in that car. Again, you can change all of the internals. So there are modifications allowed to these cars, and some of them run to a more modified state than others. But the classes on both of them are all split, as we say, based on engine capacity in the modern classics. So the more powerful cars sit in Class A, down to the lesser powered cars under 1.8 litres sit in Class D. And in the future classics, again, it's based on engine capacity, but that does differ depending on whether it's a Group 1 car, i.e. one that races from the 1970s, or whether it's a Group 2 car, i.e. those that are scooped up in the 1980s group. So we've already got then our second formation lap well and truly underway. There are 36 minutes now remaining on the clock, and we haven't as yet really got the race started, because the clock started ticking when we headed onto our second formation lap. But I think even there, that shot looks a bit brighter now this lap, does it not?
Yes, I think this particular camera last time around seemed to have a little bit of a brighter feel to it than the one at Beckett's and Maggots. But they're still, the headlights are showing up well on the screen, aren't they? So it's, but there's, strangely, there's bits of blue sky looking out of our window. But they're coming through now to start the race.
Here we go, get things underway. Miles Maserati gets his foot down the rear engine Porsche with good run all the way from Martin Chilton, whilst the Pratt Morgan, we don't have the starting driver for that, is not in the race by the look of things. That has not been able to start by the look of things, so that is going to be a non-starter for this one. It was in an earlier race, and I think they might have had problems in that one. So Miles Maserati in the Porsche 964 Turbo, leading the race in the early stages. And already, whilst they rocket their way probably down towards Village and the Loop, we've still got some cars only now just trickling their way over the start-finish line, including Alan Lee in our onboard camera car, who's doing battle with the Aston Martin DB4.
And it looks like Nick King's got ahead as they come into Village. Nick King goes tight, goes around the inside of the little Lotus as it makes its way around Village. And good move there from Nick King. He's made up a couple of places off the start line. Our camera car, the big V8 car, is coming through Aintree now. Should have the legs on the Lotus ahead down the long Wellington Straight, but seemingly the Lotus, much lighter but a smaller engine, is able to pull away as they come down into the braking area for Brooklands. You can see all that dust on the right hand side from the earlier oil spill as they turn through the left-hander at Brooklands and then swing to the right for Luffield. And you can see ahead there Nick King making good ground, pulling ahead from the Lotus and now starting to harry the car ahead of him.
Yeah, that Lotus is just starting to pull away also from Alan Lee in our onboard camera car as everybody files their way over the old Grand Prix start-finish line, so they're about half the way around the lap as they head up towards Copse Corner. And I think everybody's safely through, despite the tricky conditions, where I would say it's probably at that period where it's just greasy now. It's not wet, it's not dry, it's in between, and that's what people don't like at this stage. Maserati's lead, it's going to be Mark Chilton that's there in second position. That is Alex Taylor. Oh no, sorry, it's Mark Chilton that leads. It's Alex Taylor in second place, and Miles Maserati's down into third position. I thought he was out of shot. No, he's there in third place. Matt Holman is fourth, and fifth looks as though it's Tony Blake that's there in fifth position at the wheel of the black TVR Tuscan with the red stripe down the centre. So Mark Chilton leading the way. That might answer the question as to whether it's two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive.
It may well do with these slippery conditions. Over the line to complete the first lap, and in second place is the Alex Taylor TBR, and then it's the Maserati's Porsche, started by Miles, to hand over to Piers. There's the Audi, which is also, where's that come through in?
Was ninth, I think it'll be eighth now.
So up to eighth place, so that's also made some ground on the first lap. The rest of the field now streaming through. An assortment of Porsches and BMWs, Jaguars, Lotus, and there's our camera car coming through, Abbey, the Mustang.
And have we lost any on that first lap? There's still a few trickling their way over the start-finish line, so I think we have got, yeah, probably everybody. I don't think anybody has had any issues really. There's a little Davrian running wheel-to-wheel with the Matthew Irons BMW, the E21, that had problems in qualifying, started off the back of the grid. And I think we've largely got everybody through at the end of the first lap of the race. Mark Chilton leading the way at this stage. We're not really getting away from Alex Taylor, who's only driving his TVR Tuscan for the second time, really. New car to Alex that he brought out at Anglesey last time through. We're more used to him driving a Mazda RX-7 in one of the other CSCC series, but dived in this Tuscan and did a really good job in his first race with it just, 3 weeks ago over in Wales, and is hanging on to second place despite the fact that he's got the Miles Maserati Porsche not that far behind. Matt Holman at the wheel of almost the Gulf liveried car that sits behind there in fourth place. One of a few similarly liveried cars that you look back to Chris Hodgett's BRDC member that used to race Tuscans back in the day and was a champion. Very similarly liveried car, isn't it, that sits there in fourth place, but coming under attack from the larger engine capacity car of Tony Blake, who draws himself alongside Matt Holman. Can't quite do it on the run up towards what is Stoke Corner. So the number one car, the most successful driver in the series last year, sits there still in fifth.
A good battle between those two, and up ahead you can see the battle for second place. At the moment, the Nissan Skyline and Mark Chilton is holding the lead, but there's a while to go yet, and things like brakes and tyres will come into this over the 40-minute race, although slightly reduced because we did the first lap under the green flag. because of the changing conditions. But a change there for 4th and 5th places, with Tony Blake going through in the Tuscan Challenge car ahead of the 156 Matt Holben Tuscan coming up to Club Corner.
Yeah, we talk about cars that hark back to one-make series, and I think the TVR Tuscan Challenge is one that everybody looks back on very fondly. And I don't think we look back on it through rose-tinted glasses. I think we just look back at it, the fact that it was a brutish championship, a hugely competitive championship, and probably we're never going to get a replacement for that. You could argue maybe something like the Ginetta G55 Super Cup is a bit like that now, but it's a different type of car. It's not as brutal, is it? So TVR Tuscan's great to see so many of them out there racing and still competitive, what, 20, 30 years after the championship first really appeared in the UK. The fight is on for the lead of the race. Mark Chilton is now ever more under pressure from Alex Taylor, who can't muster any way through as yet at the wheel of the Tuscan. In a straight line, it looks as though Mark Chilton just has the legs. But through the twiddly parts, the Tuscan just seems to have the advantage, doesn't it?
Indeed it does, yes. He closes up as they went into Brooklands and Luffield. They're now going through Cops Corner. And is that the 156 of Matt Holben going back through into 4th place? That's a cracking battle for 4th and 5th. Yes, it is. He's got back through. The Golf liveried car, the orange and blue of Matt Holben, has got past Tony Blake's darker TVR as they came out of Cops Corner. Now they're in Beckett's, and he's opened a little gap out as they go through Beckett's. Maybe the, as you say, the larger engine 5-litre car of Tony Blake just has the more power, so perhaps he'll close up again as they go down the Hanger Straight. Meantime, at the head of the field, still it's Mark Chilton in Godzilla, the Nissan Skyline. And you can see the smoke coming out of the exhausts as he goes down through the gears there.
It's properly raining as well now. We get an onboard shot of Alan Lee in our onboard camera car, getting passed by the Toyota Supra that was very easily able to just work its way by fairly effortlessly coming out of the corner. So that is place lost there for Alan Lee. But with the conditions worsening all of the time, those cars that have got the grunt just aren't going to be able to use the power now, so we might see some of the other lesser powered cars starting to work their way back up through the order, and there's plenty of time in which for them to do so. 28 minutes of the race remain, which means the pit window is already open as well if people want to come in.
And the Maserati's Porsche is rear-engined, or sort of mid-engined really. It's just ahead of the rear axle, but still has more weight over those driven wheels, so that will have a slight advantage over perhaps the TVRs with the engine up front, rear-wheel drive, as we go out onto the Hanger Straight aboard Alan Lee's Mustang on a spin for car number 2. That's James and Will Dingle in the Porsche 944. That's coming out of
Stowe, isn't it?
Stowe,
yeah.
Yes, with the wing in the background. He's managed to get round and back onto the track again. So that's perhaps an indication of how slippery it's getting. But we thought that the lead was going to be going the way of the TVR, but now the conditions have changed.
Conditions have changed again, and Mark Chilton seems to have the upper hand again, so we'll have to wait to see. It's maybe as the next cloud comes over. That's a spin also for Matthew Irons, who's had a rotation at the wheel of his E20, and also another spin for the number 14 Toyota of Andrew Hayes. We've already seen that sort of rocket past Alan Lee, but yeah, he has a moment as well. So a few cars just struggling with the conditions there, and that's another spin for Matthew Irons again, so that's 2 spins in 2 corners for him. So conditions without question now deteriorating. It looks darker on track, more and more cars, Alistair, with their windscreen wipers on.
Yes, indeed, it's the rain starting to blow in now from the south side of the circuit, and that's making conditions extremely difficult at Stowe Corner and Club Corner. At the bottom of the circuit there as it comes in, and we can see that in the background in our shot the long distance has almost disappeared now in the mist as we watch a couple of Lotus or Lotuses having a good old battle going out of the loop through Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight down into Brooklands. Still leading is Mark Chilton as There's our camera car. Unfortunately, not the ideal car for these conditions.
No, definitely not. And I think it's only the second time that Alan Lee has raced this car. He did race it at Snetterton. Or was he testing at Snetterton, where John Dixon, I think, was also out in the car. So, yeah, he hasn't done much racing at all in this car. And when you're largely used to racing front-wheel drive as well, so the likes of a fairly underpowered Citroen C1 or a Mini Challenge spec car, then, yeah, to jump into a rear-wheel drive 4.6 litre thumping great big American muscle car is like chalk and cheese, isn't it, really? And just to add extra spice into the mix, let's wet the circuit as well for you, Alan. So he's doing a good job of just, for my mind, keeping it pointing in the right direction largely, and being so gentle, feeding in that power and trying to avoid the painted curbs in this weather. Yes,
really tricky. And yeah, feeding in the power is the only way. Hit the throttle and you'll just rotate the car. So through Beckett's. But the other problem that he's dealing with is not just, I remember what I did here last lap around. I put the power on here, I turned in here, I braked here. It's changing because the track is getting wetter, so they've got to try and work out how much earlier they have to brake, how much later they have to go on the power.
We saw Miles Maserati in the Porsche there coming under pressure from Tony Blake, which means that Matt Holborn now at the wheel of the 156 TVR is now up into third place. Miles Maserati's Porsche drops down into fourth, but is still coming under pressure from the number one car of Tony Blake that sits behind. And in sixth place is going to be the Audi now of Andy Woods-Dean at the wheel of that beautiful looking, fabulous sounding V8 Quattro Saloon. So that's the order that we have at the moment. It is looking pretty abysmal, isn't it, out there on track at the moment? I know the cameras make it look a lot worse than it is, but it looks unbelievably dark round through Maggots and Beckett's at this stage. So no lights on the race-leading car of Mark Chilton in terms of headlamps. He's got the two fog lamps on just underneath the bumper. There's a spin, and that's the Porsche RSR of David Burke that goes around. So that's another car that's just caught out in the tricky conditions. He's not been the first. I would very much doubt he will be the last. 23 minutes of the race still to go. We're heading towards half distance, but not many have pitted as yet.
No, they're perhaps waiting to see what happens with the conditions. Certainly the solo drivers happy to carry on at the moment. And there is always the chance that we'll get a safety car if, unfortunately, we get a car stuck in a dangerous position, which will have a bearing on the pit stops as well.
Good little fight going on between those two Lotuses that you picked up on a few laps ago. The number 20 car of David Sharp coming under pressure from 41, which is Glyn Davis. That's for the final two places inside the top 30, actually, 29th and 30th position. Albeit third and fourth in their respective classes. We will pick up post-pit stop on what's going on in the individual races, the Future Classics and the Modern Classics. At the moment, it's a Future Classic car that leads. The leading Modern Classic car is in third place. The leading TVR Tuscan, the blue and orange one, in that is Matt Holborn. So those are our two individual race leaders currently.
Well, the list of issues for Alan Lee just had one added to the bottom of it, because you pointed out, you know, it's the first time he's really been out in this car. It's wet, it's a powerful car, and now he's misting up because he was trying to reach the screen there with his right hand to wipe the screen, but he couldn't reach, so he's stuck with it. He's either got to carry on or come in and have the crew wipe that screen. It's always a problem in racing cars, isn't it, Mark? Yeah. They do seem to have a problem with airflow in the cars. They're not as good as road cars or the proper fully built racing cars, which maybe have a special air system on them.
Well, you strip all we strip so much out of them, and you strip all the seals off them, anything to try and lighten the car, don't you? And therefore, yeah, it means that the water gets in a bit more. You're a damp driver that's got into the car. You then start to sweat, which then starts to evaporate off. So your best bet is just make sure you've got some sort of windscreen clearance film put on the inside, and a good old trick as well is a few drivers with spatulas with a tea towel wrapped around it, because with a spatula in your arm, and a tea towel on, you could just get to the windscreen. We've had a change for the lead of the race, haven't we? Alex Taylor has gone through and done it. The TVR Tuscan now leads Mark Chilton, and in the pit lane is the car that is in third position. Miles Maserati heads for the pit lane this time through.
Oh, great move as conditions worsen for the car that you'd think would not be so quick as it gets wetter. That's the TVR of Alex Taylor, number 66, leads now the 79 Nissan Skyline of Mark Chilton. And those two well ahead of third place. As you say, Miles Maserati, who was in third, is now in the pits handing over to Piers to complete the race. and Mark Chilton challenging as they come down into Stowe Corner, goes for the inside, gets through, does he? Alex Taylor alongside, and Chilton's going to spin. No, he doesn't. That's definitely four-wheel drive. We now know the way he controlled that was definitely four-wheel drive. It pulled it round.
It pulled it round, absolutely. It was sideways, and I was the same as you. I thought he's going to lose that car there, but no, fantastic stuff from Mark Chilton. Into the pit lane, we start to see a few more cars dive their way. Paul Dingle heads to the pit lane. David Sharp is in the pit lane. The two-car team of the Ginetta G20s also in the pit lane as well, which is going to be Roger Hamilton giving way to Nick Hamilton, and they're all filing their way in as we reach exactly the halfway point of the race.
So we're watching here the pit stop for number 74, Paul Dingle, in the Porsche 944. He's driving solo. A spin there by the looks of it. We just caught the end of it for the Mark Dean, Nigel Hannam Lotus Elise.
So yeah, just hearing Alex Taylor is usually a very good driver, and in the wet just excels even more, so he'll be loving these conditions. More and more cars heading for the pit lane. That looks like we've got Colin Philpott into the pit lane. We've got Matthew Wines, who's had a couple of spins in the yellow BMW, into the pit lane. We can see the Davrian is in the pit lane as well at the background of the shot. That will be Mark East that is about to jump on board the car that's being vacated by Ian McBay. So more and more cars heading for the pit lane. Alex Taylor continuing on his merry way. Now remember, the likes of some of the cars at the front have got those additional time penalties to worry about. Alex Taylor has not at the wheel of the race leading car. Mark Chilton has at the wheel of the car that's there in second place, an extra 30 seconds to spend in the pit lane, and Tony Blake has got an extra 20 as he sits there in third place. Matt Holborn has got an extra 20 as he sits there in fourth place. So this is playing ever more into the hands of Alex Taylor, who's leading on merit, and compared to the cars around him also doesn't have an extra time penalty in the pits.
Yeah, that's a big advantage for him. He carries on his way in the TVR, followed by the Mark Chilton Skyline, which oh so nearly had a spin, but Mark controlled it beautifully at Stowe Corner. But that's a measure of just how slippery the track is, and we can see even in the pit lane, the pit lane very wet indeed, and here we're back out on track again. Not a huge amount of spray yet, but certainly the water is now lying on the surface. There's the Skyline. You saw briefly the leading car of Alex Taylor up ahead coming down into Stowe Corner. This is where Mark Chilton had that moment last time, previous time around. Neither coming into the pit lane on that occasion, I don't think. They looked like they were going to carry on.
No, I don't think so. Glyn Davis is into the pit lane. Also looks Alan Lee is in the camera car that we've got, the onboard camera car, so Alan Lee comes into pit, and no, race leader is in, so Alex Taylor and Mark Chilton do both come in on this lap, so they both head down pit road. Alan Lee will come to a halt at the wheel of our camera car. That's the opportunity to get the windscreen dealt with as well. So into the pit lane comes the number 556 Ford Mustang, the Cobra, and yeah, wiping the windscreen wipers as quickly as you can is not going to clear the mist from the inside of the windscreen, Alan Lee, I'm afraid. You can see that he's had a quick go at trying to wipe it. It does look a little bit different. There you go. He's indicating, I think, to the mechanics that he needs a bit of assistance here. So that car heads in towards the pit lane, which means that at the moment it will be Matt Holborn that would pick up the lead of the race if he stayed on the circuit. But no, he dives to the pit lane as well. So car number 556 also into the pit lane. So the Audi potentially could pick up the lead of the race if it doesn't fit in the hands of Andy Woodstein this time through, Alistair.
Yes, that could go out. We've got cars going back out on track, but may just get round in time. And nice to see Alex Taylor having a friendly chat in the pit lane there, mid-race, whilst you're leading. Very relaxed. And here's the Audi now coming into Club Corner, is it? And
that's Abbey and Farm.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Yes, it's difficult to tell in these conditions, but coming through Village now, the Audi hasn't gone through into the lead yet, and it's quite a way to go, so I'm not sure he'll get back perhaps in time before our early stoppers come back round.
Yeah, he's in the lead at the moment, isn't he? Yeah, because he hasn't pitted. All the rest are in the pit lane. So Andy Woodstein has picked up the lead of the race, but yeah, we'll still have to pit. And up to second in the race, I think will now come the number 13 car up to second in the race. So I think that's the way it will work at this stage. Is it number 13? Yes, it is. Yeah, the Porsche Boxster up into second position in the race, which is going to be Tony Marion that starts that one. Into the pit lane. Now, this is another car that's got time penalty. In the pit lane comes the BMW of Alan Thompson. Into the pit lane comes David Burke, following his rotation at the wheel of the Porsche 911 RSR. Into the pit lane comes the James Neal and Neil Harvey number 11 Porsche. So they're all piling now into the pit lane. But for Alex Taylor, he's still staying out. He stayed out for another lap. He didn't come in this time. Oh, sorry, he did come in. He came in on the previous lap. He's now out of the pit lane, rather.
He's on his way again. Mark Chilton was still in the pit lane, but he's got a slightly longer penalty, if I remember what you were reading out, your penalties.
Yeah, Alex Taylor has nothing to worry about. Mark Chilton's got an extra 30 seconds, so the gap should be just over 30 seconds by the time they come next time through. And for Mark Chilton, he only just gets out ahead of Matt Holborn, who got an extra 20 seconds to spend in the pit lane. So that was quite close between those two. So there goes Mark Chilton. And where's the blue TVR Tuscan of Matt Holborn? Yeah, in the background of it. So Matt Holborn has gained 10 seconds over the Nissan, largely because of he had to stop for 10 seconds shorter. The Nissan stopped for an extra 30. The light blue TVR stopped for an extra 20. So that's sort of bottled those up together.
Going through Aintree and out onto the Wellington Straight once again, down towards Brooklands. See whether the Matt Holborn blue and orange TVR can make any impression on Mark Chilton's Nissan. At this stage it doesn't look like he can. Chilton laps
Ryan Moan, I think that is, yeah.
The Porsche 944, and there is the third placed car of Matt Holborn. Alex Taylor out front ahead of these two. That suggests somebody had a spin.
It sounded as though somebody had a bit of a moment there at Copse Corner and didn't quite manage to gather it up in time. And it looks as though Matt Holborn's had a spin as well at Copse Corner. So he lost the tail end of what would have been the third place TVR Tuscan. Thumbs up to the marshals as he gets it pointed back round in the right direction, but has lost out to Piers Maserati, who now goes by. So place lost there for the light blue and orange TVR Tuscan. The car that was leading the race came into the pit lane last time through, Andy Woods-Dean, so that would be to give way to Martin Johnston for part 2 of the race. Tony Marion also came in as well to hand the number 13 Porsche over to Brian Richardson, and also the other Nissan Skyline that we've got in the field, Jason and Louise Kennedy, who are up to 3rd, have come into the pit lane as well this time through. So most of the cars have now pitted. There is one car, a couple of cars that haven't pitted, one of which is Ryan Moan at the wheel of his Porsche in 14th place, and the other one of which is Rodney Frost at the wheel of the number 6 Jaguar XJS that hasn't pitted. And we've also got the number 16 BMW that hasn't pitted at this stage, and neither is the number 65 Mazda, which has got me scratching my head a little bit on the basis of there's only 12.5 minutes to go. Maybe they didn't start the stopwatch in the car at the start of the second green flag lap.
That's possible, yes. Easy mistake to make, I suppose, yeah. The Mark Chilton Nissan had a bit of a moment there coming through club, just got a bit sideways but managed to control it. So all parts of the circuit now very, very slippery indeed. But that spin at Copse Corner for the Holborn TVR really took away that pressure from Mark Chilton.
Rodney Frost and Ryan Moan are now into the pit lane, so the cars that were, I think it probably was a case they didn't start the stopwatch in the car because maybe they weren't aware that the clock would start ticking on the second green flag lap, but they are coming in to serve their pit stops, which is the main thing. They haven't forgotten about it, so that is good. The car that was leading the race, which was Alex Taylor, should, at the end of this lap, go back into the lead of the race potentially. We'll have to wait and see. It might take another lap or so to flush its way out, but Alex Taylor, on the basis that he was leading on merit at the wheel of the number 66 TVR Tuscan and didn't have any extra time penalty to spend in the pits, and it looked like it was a reasonably efficient pit stop, he should be back into the lead of the race near the end of this lap.
Yes, a very relaxed pit stop for him. No issues at all. There he comes down into Stowe Corner. moving across from the Mazda RX-7 to the TVR Tuscan. Very well indeed for Alex Taylor.
Still looks a good car. It doesn't look like it's 30 years old, does it, the Tuscan?
No. So going round, choosing to go around the outside of the little Ginetta G20. And just for good measure, as Mark Chilton has another spin. A little bit of a sideways moment for our leader there as well.
Was that at Cops, was it? He might have been, yeah. So yeah, what's that going to do to Mark Chilton? He was in 7th position, wasn't he? There were still a few other cars ahead of him that hadn't pitted, but he is... Yeah, I think that must have been... No, that was Maggotts and Beckett he had the spin then, wasn't it? Yeah.
Sounds like somebody else is having a spin as we watch Chilton, and that's Maserati right behind, isn't it?
So I don't think he lost the place then. I think Mark Chilton is still in the... Any places he gains will be a result of cars pit stopping. So, yeah, I think Piers Maserati is was behind him, still remains behind him. So no place is lost for the Nissan, just time.
So can Piers Maserati in the latter stages of the race close another spin for the RSR Porsche? Car number 26 of David Burke. Yes, can Piers Maserati close in on the Nissan ahead? And this is the battle we were watching earlier on, isn't it? Which is rejoined now, I think.
It is, yeah. Matt Holborn coming under pressure as they come over the start-finish line from Tony Blake. So this is going to be for 4th and 5th position. Car number 156, the light blue and orange Tuscan, under pressure from Tony Blake. Matt Holborn stopped for an extra 20 seconds, so did Tony Blake, and that's why the two of them are back together again now. Tony Blake, though, has just been able to nudge his way through and ahead. So up to 4th place goes Tony Blake, the number 1 TVR Tuscan. Down to 5th goes Matt Holborn, with 9 minutes of the race still to go. Let's just confirm the order now at the moment, because it has fully shaken itself out. Number 66, Alex Taylor, leads the race at this stage and leads also the Advantage Motorsport Future Classics element of the race. 2nd is number 79, Mark Chilton, and 3rd is the leading car in the Cartek Motorsports Modern Classics, which is number 46 Porsche of Piers Maserati. 4th is 156 Matt Holborn. 5th is number 1 Tony Blake, and 6th now is going to be car number 22. That's the Toyota, isn't it, of Richard Hayes, that is there in 6th place. 7th place is John Cockerton. 8th place is Tommy Grout. 9th place is 56 Alan Thompson, and completing the top 10 is now going to be Martin Johnston at the wheel of the Audi. The only other one we need to pick out at the moment, who's leading Future Classics 70s group, you know who it is? It's the Aston Martin, isn't it? The DB4 that leads it in 12th position overall. Fantastic stuff being done by Nicholas King.
Yes, because he started way back on the grid.
Yeah.
In 31st place on the grid. So brilliant drive from him. And here we've got the battle for 2nd place going the way of the Porsche at the moment as they head out onto the Hangar Straight. But will the Nissan be able to pull alongside? They've got slower cars around them. Mark Chilton goes between the two slower cars. I don't think he's close enough to challenge Piers Maserati as they come down into Stowe Corner. And so that's a change of position. The Porsche goes up to 2nd. The Nissan is down in 3rd place as they go down the hill and into Club Corner.
Yeah, so fantastic stuff from the former British GT champion and Le Mans racer Piers Maserati, who nowadays is heavily involved in trying to establish a new electric scooter racing series that he's heavily involved with. They're trying to build a European or a World Series for electric scooter racing. Which looks really intriguing. They look horrific things to try and ride. It just looks very dangerous even when they're going nowhere. So yeah, best of luck with that, Piers. I don't think he wants to ride one. I think he's feeling far more comfortable with 4 wheels, one in each corner. But yeah, just something different for motorsport-wise. So the Audi heading up towards us. That has in the hands of Martin Johnston, having taken over it from Andy Woodstein. Just managed to cling on to a place inside the top 10, and I thought these conditions might aid that car. And also Roger Hayes slowing down at the wheel of the Toyota, I'm afraid to say. So the Celica slowing down as it heads down the bottom section of the Hangar Straight, and I'm not sure it's even got enough motive power to get into the pit lane, has it? Seems to be going really slowly indeed, doesn't it? That was a car that was, what, 6th place?
Yes, that's, and he had a spin earlier as well, so despite that, he's crossing to the inside in the hope that he can make it to the pit lane, which is going to make life interesting for this group of cars coming down into Stowe Corner. But he's well aware, you can see him looking in the mirror there to make sure he's keeping well out of the way. But that's 6th place gone begging for the Toyota Celica of Richard Hayes, which will promote everyone up one, apart from those ahead of him. Alex Taylor still leads, increasing gap over Piers Maserati. And, two XJSs battling with BMW as they go through Stowe.
That's Colin Philpott, isn't it, who is fighting away with Rodney Frost. Two teammates as well. They're both prepared by Powerbell Racing, those two cars there. And they've both been long time Jaguar racers, and they are hot on the heels of Colin Whitmore that lies ahead. So through they go. So the two XJSs absolutely wheel to wheel. Rodney Frost goes through and ahead of Colin Philpott, who puts a couple of wheels onto the painted curb, whilst ahead of them Colin Whitmore has a big moment at the wheel of the BMW E36 M3, the furniture dealer from Sutton Bridge in the south of Lincolnshire, on the Lincolnshire-Norfolk border. He's in the gravel trap, he's at the final corner, he's going nowhere, and he's not particularly in a safe place, I wouldn't have thought.
No, and unfortunately the gravel isn't wet enough to compact, so he's buried himself with the rear wheels. That's not going anywhere without a tow.
No, and with 4.5 minutes to go and a car stranded on the gravel at the edge of the circuit, I'm not surprised that we're seeing the red flags coming out. We have reached 75% distance as well, so that is a shame that we've ended our final race of the season with a red flag, but it's greasy out there. Colin Whitmore didn't do a lot wrong. The tail of the car just got a little bit away from him. Of course, as a driver, what you do is you counter steer into it. It's rear wheel drive, so you'll lift off the gas as well, and he just didn't quite catch the pendulum effect, did he?
No, that was very unfortunate. We saw very clearly on the camera shot him working away at the steering wheel, trying to get the car under control, but not able to do it. So that confirms, because we'll count back a lap, but that won't make any difference to the win for Alex Taylor. Great drive in really tricky conditions. Yeah,
fantastic drive for Alex Taylor. So yeah, hats off to him. The number 66 TVR Tuscan. Remember, it's only his second race behind the wheel of this car. Has regularly raced a rotary engine Mazda RX-7 in future classics for a good number of years. Will now moves over to from the 70s group in future classics to the 80s group in future classics, and in his second race in the car, his first coming at Anglesey a few weekends earlier, he now goes to the top step of the podium and picks up the final win of the season in the Advantage Motorsport Future Classics, which you could argue, Alistair, final round of the season is always the best one to win, because you don't get a penalty.
No, it doesn't carry over to next year.
Doesn't carry over to next year. It's the poor person that won it at Snetterton that's had to carry it all season that you feel sorry for. So we should be able to confirm the results in a very short while for you for the final race of the grid. But what we can do is we can bring you not the results as such, but what we can do is we can bring you the positions in which they were circulating at the point the red flag came out. I don't think it's hugely going to affect the ultimate result, but this is the point at which the red flag came out. Alex Taylor was leading the race. Second was Miles and Piers Maserati, and third was Mark Chilton. Fourth place was Tony Blake. Fifth place was the number 129 car of Tommy Grout. And then in sixth place was Matt Holborn. Alan Thompson was seventh, John Cockerton was eighth, Louise and Jason Kennedy were in ninth place, and it was the number 13 Porsche that was started by Tony Marion and handed over to Brian Richardson that completed the top 10. The TVR of Moyes was there in 11th place ahead of Aidan Farrell and David Whelan. Martin Johnson and Andy Woodstein came through in 13th place, with Bob Searles and Tony Jardine in 14th place. Neil Harvey and Cope finished there in 15th place. Nicholas King was 16th, and therefore I think he was the first of the 70s cars home in the end. And then it was Rodney Frost ahead of the Roger Hayes Ailing Toyota at the time, with David Sharp and Will Dingle completing the top 20. And as you can see, the results again carry on for page after page after page of that, for what has been a brilliant day of racing here for the Classic Sports Car Club. The Silverstone Spectacular on the Grand Prix circuit is the final race meeting of of the season. And remember, we are shortly to announce what will be going on, the dates and the venues for the 2022 season. So you can keep an eye on all of that on social media, on whether it be Twitter or Facebook, or of course on the Classic Sports Car Club site, classicsportscarclub.co.uk. So Alistair, brilliant day's racing. It's a great day to end, a great way to end the season, albeit red flag at the end, but thankfully no damaged cars, I don't think, at all today, hardly. You know, a little bit of damage on one or two here, but no major incidents. Packed grids of cars, fantastic racing.
Absolutely, yeah, and everybody driving with respect for other drivers, which is always nice to see. And it was probably one of the busiest days qualifying and racing we've seen all season. And every Classic Sports Car Club race meeting is absolutely packed. But with the very long circuit here, with 61 cars maximum, we've been able to pack all the grids out. An absolutely brilliant day's racing.
Yeah, so all the cars heading down the pit lane. We will no doubt just grab some reaction with our final few drivers of the day, our final few drivers of the season as well. So marshals, as ever, fantastic job that they have done. So again, we will thank all of our volunteer marshals and officials for all of their help throughout the course of today. Sorry we couldn't have organised the weather better for you, but on the whole, for what is now heading towards almost the end of October, we have been reasonably blessed with some good weather throughout the course of the day. It's just a shame that the final race or so, the weather just about became inclement. So a bit more clearing up to do. Colin Whitmore's car undamaged, sitting there in the gravel trap, and well, as the curtain starts to fall on the 2022 season for the Classic Sports Car Club, we'll see what unfolds for them in the following season. So from Alistair Douglas and myself, Mark Werrell, that's all from us in the commentary box. We'll hand you downstairs to Kieran McGinley for the final time today. Goodbye.
Well, after a little eventful end to that race, the race had have our leader at the time in Alex Taylor in the TVR Tuscan Challenge, the Advantage Motorsport Futures Classics 1980. You were leading at the time, so we'll say you're the winner for now, although it hasn't been declared. I mean, how were the conditions out there?
Well, they were entertaining. You know, it's always fun when you get changeable conditions like that. It's a whole different game, being able to carry as much pace as the conditions deteriorate. And Mark, who I was kind of battling with in the Nissan Skyline, he's a great driver. That car's got a hell of a lot of power. But I was just holding him in the drive. But as the conditions changed, I feel like it just started to come in my favour, and I was able to get past him before the pit stops. And then, yeah, it was just a matter of bringing her home after that. And yeah, loads of fun though, and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Shame to see the race end prematurely, but
is it the BMW that's over there? Is that
I think it's a multitude of incidents,
right.
yes. But
I think we got within like 5 minutes of the. I think we got within 5 minutes of the checkered flag time anyway, so we got value for money.
In the end, yes. But yeah, just sum up today. I mean, you qualified in the dry, raced in the wet. You've done it all today.
Yeah, it's a new car to us. We've really struggled to get it together. We've had new engine, new gearbox, and the handling was all over the place. In quality, we were way off what we should have been, and we just changed all the settings because, hey, nothing to lose. And it seems to have come good because we could really hold on to, as I say, Chilton, who was super quick, but the car was there. It was brilliant today, so delighted.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you very much, Alex, for speaking to us, and congratulations on your victory. We'll say victory for now, but congratulations.
Thanks a lot.
We'll see now if we can catch a word with the Cartek's Motorsport Modern Classics. Well, we'll say winner for now in the Porsche 964. Now it's either Miles or it's Piers.
I'm Piers, yeah.
It's Piers. Piers, winner so far in this one. Really tough conditions out there. How would you sum that up?
So far? Why are you saying so far?
Well, you never know. But we'll say you're the declared winner for now. How do you feel?
I don't know now. You said I might not be the winner. Yeah, anyway, it was all right. We just looked after the car, to be honest. It was, you know, on pure pace we should win, to be honest. So, yeah, we just looked after her. She's worth too much money to risk. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it was good. It was a good race. It was a fun race. I had a really good race earlier in John's car in Slick Series as well. So, you know, I've had a good day.
And you've obviously qualified in the dry, raced in the wet, so you've done a little bit of everything today. Value for money?
Yeah, it's good. I think we should have less cars on the grid personally, but yeah, it's been a good day. You know, as you said, wet and dry, which was interesting. The first time we've actually driven the car in the wet on these tyres, so it was a new experience for both me and Miles. And yeah, I think we were probably a little bit overcautious, but as I said, not too many risks is important on these days, especially the last race of the season.
Absolutely, and now you get to go home and enjoy the victory, and congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
And for us here at Silverstone, on a damp and soggy end to the day, we bid you farewell. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's racing action. Until then, take care of yourselves. We'll see you very soon. Good night.